Hi everyone, my name is Singing. And last week, I hope you still remember, yeah. Last week, our classmate is focusing on the attract of potential candidates, including internal or external recruitment methods, as well as inclusive recruitment practices. Well, once we receive the resume, the next question will be, who is the right person for that particular roles? And this brings us to our today's topics, which is the employee selection. Okay, as you all can see, here is the overall hiring process, which is consists of like 10 steps. And last week, our classmate is focusing on step 2, which is to attract the potential candidates. Once the HR has received a resume from the people, so the next step HR will see is they will review the resume to see whether the candidate is fulfilled the requirement or not. And after that, then they will move to the stage that we're focusing on today, which is step 6, 7, and 8. Interview, testing, and decision making. Before I go into these 3 steps, please allow me to introduce the company that we'll be focusing today. Who is Bonuslink? Bonuslink is a company that established in 1998 in Malaysia. It's a loyal reward program which allow the member to earn and redeem a point through the participating partner brands such as Shell, MBank, and AIG. Well, and AIG is a company that didn't produce their own products, but in order to run their business smoothly, to maintain their daily operations, of course they need to hiring some people. So let me look at how the Bonuslink, the recruitment process is. First, what's the interview? An employment interview is a formal discussion between the interviewer and job applicants conducted to gather relevant information and assess the applicant's suitability for a positions, ultimately supporting the employment decisions. For example, the HR will ask several questions, very general questions such as like, talk about yourself. And could you share with me the challenging experience that you faced and memorable for you? And how would you solve the problems? But who is the person who made the candidate first? The HR or the manager? Next. As you can see, here is the sample selection process in our textbooks. And I will focus on number 7, which as you can see, the human resource department are conduct the primary screenings. And then only the final decisions and the line manager is took part. And this is quite similar to what Bonuslink is currently doing. As you can see, here is the comment from the Glassdoor. This is like an existing employee from the Bonuslink, and they share the experience when they interview in the Bonuslink. You can see they was smooth with 2 stages, HR and then followed by the manager. So based on this, we can know that here is a simple question and simple process in the Bonuslink. But here is the issue. Is the HR first methods is always effective for every position? For marketing position, I would say yes, because as a marketer, you need to have a common communication skill, interpersonal skill. So the HR can help you to figure out which candidate have this particular skill to select the correct candidates. But next slide. When hiring some high technical positions, such as senior data engineer, here is the extra role that the Bonuslink is currently hiring for. You can see here is the requirements. If you are not expertise for this particular role, you are not going to know what is the exactly skill is needed. So the HR first methods may not effective when you are hiring high technical positions. And there is a risk is that some HR were screening out some high potential candidates because they think that you are not good in promoting yourself, or I couldn't understand what you're talking about. I don't know what's your experience. And I found one of the company is totally different, using a different way to hiring this such of job. The company is like Snowflakes. Here is the engineering hiring process in their official website. If you are interested, then you may go through and see how exactly the work is. But now I will briefly just teach and touch already. So as you can see the initial screen, the hiring manager already took place. And they will ask several questions like assess their background and technical skill set, and followed by the technical interviews and panel interview, and then final do the decisions. So based on this, I would recommend the Bonuslink to use the panel interviews. Panel interviews involve multiple interviewers assessing the same candidates and combining their evaluation to support the selection decision. In the simple words, the HOD and HR they can sitting together to interview the particular candidates for using a different perspective to evaluate the candidates, not only relying on what what is what either the interviewer said. So the HR may focus on person to organization fits to check whether the candidate is fit the organization value or the culture. Well, the manager may can use a personal job fits to test whether the candidate's knowledge, skill, and ability is fulfill the minimum requirements. Oh yeah, I will focus mention it. If you're using a panel interviews, they can avoid such the risk that I mentioned earlier. So after that, then we're moving on to testing process. Selection tests are assessment instruments used to assess organizations in making employment decisions. They are designed to evaluate applicant ability, skills, personality, aptitude, and another job-related characteristic that cannot be adequately assessed through an interview alone. This test is to use or evaluate the candidates by using some several tests. For example, a personality test. But here is the same questions. As I mentioned in the interview part earlier, you shouldn't use a standard process to evaluate every single position that you are going to hire. Same is the testing process. We should adopt the test that is suited for the job characteristic. For example, if you are hiring marketing positions, then the personality test may be suitable for using in this particular stage. Because as a marketer, you may necessary to test whether the candidate is introvert or extrovert. But now I'm not saying that if the person is introvert, then we are not going to hire them. Just because as a marketer, you are not only going to communicate with your client or stakeholder, but also you need to do some written reports, to do some campaign events, and some analytic report. So based on this, some introvert may can focus it on to present to their clients, while the introvert can do some background works to support the extrovert person. Well, imagine that you are using a personality test to test the engineer roles. Is it necessary for you to know that engineer is extrovert, introvert? I don't think it is necessary. The skill and the logical thinking is more important for hiring engineering course. So the aptitude test will be more suitable. There is a few types of aptitude tests like numerical reasoning test, verbal reasoning test. This kind of test is for using to test their employees' the logical thinking and problem solving skill in order for them to solve their problem when they're happening in their daily routines. Okay, so after we have conducted the interview and we have also done with the testing, and this is the time for us to do the final decision making. Selection decision making is a process of evaluating information obtained from interviews, tests, and other assessment methods to determine which candidate is the most suitable for the positions. And they will have two approaches for the organization to do the decision making. One is successive harder approach and compulsory approach. Successive harder approach is an approach that the candidate must pass the requirement standard at each selection stage before processing to the next stage. Those who fail a harder are eliminated for further consideration. To be simple, if you are performing not very well in your HR interviews, then you may not have any chance to see your HOD, to meet the HOD with the particular department that you interview for. So this is quite highly happening in the company like Honestly. They are using this kind of ways, then they may create a risk. So for compulsory approach is opposite way. The candidates are evaluated based on their overall performance across multiple selection criteria, where stronger performance in one area can compensate for weaker performance in another. Which means if you didn't perform well in your HR, but you're doing very well in your test or meet your HOD, and you still have a chance to see your HOD to keep the jobs. Well, for my recommendation, I will suggest bonus thing to you a compulsory approach, because this only for this reason. I want to align with my suggestion in the interview, the panel interview. After we using a panel interview, the HOD and HR they may discuss together and use a compulsory approach to make the final decision. Okay, so what will happen if you are hiring the wrong person in your organization? And this is the internal sides, right? As you can see, making the wrong selection decision can have a serious consequences. Selection error may result in continued poor performance or employee turnover. We are also creating additional costs for the organization. And I do believe we discussed this last week and the hiring cost, right? So if you are facing high turnover, some person may leave and then the HR may need to spend more time or money to interview the new roles for new person or an organization. And another most important thing is your performance. Imagine you are a person who work anonymously, and your colleagues keep changing. Even the HR hiring is a person with 10-year experience, but different operations they have different running methods for their business. Okay, so that may affect your self-performance also. Not only for the internals, but also the external. This could also damage the company reputation and potentially discourage further candidates from applying, as corporate reputation has been found to influence individual attention to apply for job opportunity. Imagine you're a candidate, you're a person who looking for a job, and you are quite interested for a bonus thing, and then you scroll down and see the comments like 1 star or 2 star, like mention about poor leadership, this kind of thing. Are you still willing to apply that particular roles? I don't think so, right? Yeah, here is the problem. From this result, you can affect the opportunity for the company to hiring the high technical persons or the person who is very good in their works. Yeah, so for overall, I will conclude that to select the right interview methods and testing process should not be standardized. You should use the different interview based on their job characteristic and make a good final decision in order to avoid this kind of situation. And that's all for me. Okay, now I'm okay. Is that okay? For my question, imagine you are a HR and they have 2 candidates. One candidate, you know, he or she is very perform well in that particular roles, but you know that that person is like they may preach your culture, working culture to be toxic. So, but another, their performance overall is quite well, like average. But they are very good person and very kind person. You are HR. Which person are you going to hire?
Can you repeat? The first person is good but very toxic.
Like mean, when you interview the particular person, then you know that the person is like, yeah, a bit straightforward.
You mean toxic? Like, just a general. Like a toxic.
But the first candidate is very good. It's
They're
just
good in performance in their job.
performance is good.
Yeah, the
but
testing of whether
let's say got toxic traits. Toxic traits.
and potential.
The second candidate is average.
Yeah. But it is a very good person, and you see that's very smiling, and when you interview the person.
I see. Okay.
Average. Give the average one.
Average, like they can handle your stuff, but maybe he or she needs someone to lead the candidate.
I'll pick the average one. Because the average one can improve. You can't change who you are. If you're toxic, you're toxic. If you're average, you can improve.
Yeah, so which person you may like want to hire for?
Second one.
The second one. Yeah, it's quite correct. Because nowadays the working environment is very important. Even I know you are very good in working, right? But when you are good into the working environment, and then you know that this this colleague work for you, and then you may hesitate when you need to communicate. You have to, but you don't want to. Yeah, this is to bring the person who very. This is a difficult for another colleagues to work with this kind of colleague, and they may feel some. I don't want to go to job for this day because of this person. This kind. For me, yes lah. For me myself, I'll be like this kind of person. Okay, thank you for your answering question. Then the second will be, as I mentioned earlier, we'll go back to the interview. Yeah, this one. The second one. You see, when I'm using a panel interview, I know there is a limitation. Do you now have any idea about this, the limitation of this interview? Anyone? Okay, I repeat again what is panel interview about. This panel interview is the HR and HOD that's sitting together to interview the particular candidates and to evaluate the candidates. What is the limitation? I mean the disadvantage for using this method.
I'm not sure if it's the answer you're looking for, but I think that
Just trying.
the disadvantage of using a panel interview is that you can't really see the true personality of the candidate because they're being interviewed by some higher ups in the company, right? They'll obviously show the best side of themselves. Like, you know how when you have like a job interview and they ask you, what are your weaknesses when it comes to this job? You won't actually tell them like, oh, I have bad time management, or have difficulty using, the Excel spreadsheets, you're going to tell them something like, oh, I work too hard, or I'm too much of a hard worker and stuff like that. So I think that might be a disadvantage.
Okay. Actually, there's not. Okay, my answering very quite well. But I have another answer is that sometimes the panel interview the company don't want to use is because the HOD is quite busy and they can't interview the candidate one by one, right? So what I mentioned is that we are only using this approach for that particular roles. But the other roles we still can use the HR and then followed by HOD. Yeah, I will say this all for me today. Thank you.
Okay, Xin Ying, so my question to you is. Okay. You spent quite some time talking about the selection process. Okay. Now, at Bonus Link, for tech hirings, right? For positions related to tech, Bonus Link uses specific case assignments. So what that means is, if you are hiring for someone in tech positions, they will actually sit them down. Instead of having a conversation, they will say, okay, here's a case study, I need you to solve it. Can you suggest a case assignment as a test for the hiring of a data engineer? So I repeat the question.
I know what you mean. You're using this card to evaluate the candidate.
Yes, can you use the same
case
way
study?
for data engineers? Yeah.
Case study. You implement.
Yes. Yeah.
I would say this is
Yeah.
quite possible because I want to share some TMI, like some information. My sister is an engineer, civil engineer, and she shared with me the experience is that the interviewers like HOD, they're asking her, hey, could you do this like the paper test, like an exam, and then could you answer this question immediately, like interview. So I think this method is quite very possible because I'm engineering, you didn't have to study, right? You have finished your study, and then if I give you, and this is the only ways that test your ability when you are hiring interview with this job, and especially as a senior, you should do this as a senior, and this is a very good way for organization to hiring a good performance persons for that particular role.
Anything else?
And another thing is that
Why is it good? It's good because it can test what? Related to data engineer.
the problem solving skill for particular roles. Because sometimes you don't have any plans. Sometimes the system down, they won't tell you, hey, tomorrow I'm going to down or something else. This is coming with immediately. So this is also one of the tests to test their problem solving skill immediately, like your reaction, yeah, the reactions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.